The entire population of the United States represents just 4% of the world's population, and yet Americans use 30% of the world's resources. They also produce 30% of the world's waste.
Hello amazing viewer, this is Comfort for Life. I bring to you a compilation of TikTok videos together with famous social videos for educational purposes. If you're new here, consider subscribing, and to my returning viewers, I love and appreciate you. Your love for this channel is on another level. I love you and I don't take it for granted. Let's dive into today's video.
Okay, so let's have a conversation about the language that we could use for the whites. I'd argue, based on my last video, that you could use the term white Americans for the lazy ones of us, the ones who are pure consumerist hogs.
Before we go further, let us listen to this video and let me know what you think.
Tough immigration law just isn't working out. Most immigration workers left, so the farmer hired Americans. Problem is, he says, most show up late, work slower, and are ready to head home after lunch. Some even quit after just one day out in the field. And farmers say many Americans are not physically fit and simply don't work fast enough.
Many of our local farmers are dependent on immigrant labor to pick their crops every day. And that's the produce you and I are buying in the grocery store. But many of the men I spoke with agree that immigrants need to be legalized in some form or fashion. Several of the farmers I spoke with today off camera say the inconsistency of the immigration law is already hitting their business. They told me workers are simply moving to states who do not have immigration laws, and they say that could jeopardize farming.
The United States is a consumer nation. You guys per capita consume more goods and products and resources than any nation in the world. The United States is an incredibly wasteful society in general, but you guys can't survive without imports. That's kind of how global economy works. But you don't export enough product to cause a collapse of a global economy if you decide to stop, shipping out corn and soybeans and wheat, which is your major contributing, product that is needed around the world. However, those all rely on fertilizer. And I don't think most people realize this, but the farmlands aren't fertile anymore. They rely on fertilizer yearly, if not bi-yearly. They're getting dosed with fertilizer. And Canada, and Russia, and China produce pretty much all the fertilizer. So if the three of us decide we're not going to ship you guys any fertilizer, your farms are shot. You guys will not be able to produce enough food to export anything. And furthermore, the United States and Americans in general, people are pretty intolerant of you guys at this point. So it won't take much for all the nations, just to a degree, not to ship you guys anything, not to do any trade with you. And I don't think you understand how quickly...
Enjoying watching the US collapsing on itself? Of course you are. But as we watch it, there are two key numbers to keep in mind: 4 and 30. The entire population of the United States represents just 4% of the world's population, and yet Americans use 30% of the world's resources. They also produce 30% of the world's waste. Even if the US government crumbles in on itself, and that's what all the hot gaities, ladies, and ladies are manifesting in 2025, Americans are the most hyper-individualistic, rabid consumers on this planet. And they are devouring resources: water, food, power, fuel, disposable goods, plastics. If we want to have any hope of survival as a species, American culture needs to end and be replaced with a far more sustainable alternative.
This is the thing America don't need to get. Don't be mad at black and brown people for taking jobs. Be mad at lazy white people. If it wasn't for lazy white people, nobody would be here. If you want America to be American only for white people, have them doing jobs they don't want people to come here and do. Like, we want our country back. Black people didn't just come here. We didn't get on a cruise. Like, it wasn't a job fair.
Right.
People came to do jobs you wouldn't do. Even in the other iterations, this is the thing about America. They always needed somebody to come and do work no one else would do. But then they need what they want is for them to come, work, and leave, not become political forces. But like I hear immigrants are taking all the jobs. Maybe the job you see a illegal immigrant doing, you go, I should be doing that right there. I want to do that.
Yes.
Only reason I'm a little mad is as a black man, they didn't show up during slavery. If they would have, we'd have got some time off. Like, thank God you got here when you did.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I got Tuesday and Thursday off now.
I noticed that at a festival one time where I was sitting there and I'm like, the people who were cleaning these porta potties, I was like, none of them are white.
No.
Right.
My definition of whiteness in America has a huge component of just laziness in it. You know what I mean? Like the not having to work for or do anything hard in their lives in order to be given all of the blessings of our amazing culture and materials. Or we could just call them what they feel like to me, babies. Whiny little babies. But it should be understood that the entire system in this country is geared towards making you into that baby, right? That's what it is to live in a consumerist capitalist society. It is all about making you spend as much fucking money as possible so that, like, those above us can be enriched.
Well, well, well. Congratulations. Fantastic. I don't remember seeing that in the last 4 years. Limited 2 per customer because of a shortage. I check every week. If that price goes up 1 penny, I will make video after video after video.
Got back from the farmer's market. I buy my produce at a farmer's market so I can get it directly from the farms themselves. The produce tastes way better, it's cheaper, and it's easier to access quality food. So I just went to this stand that sells vegetables that's from the Central Valley, and I get a lot of my produce from them every single Sunday. And I asked them, hey, did the ice raids affect you guys? Are you guys okay? And the woman looked at me, and it took her a minute to respond, and she said, almost all of our produce went bad because there was no one to pick any of it. And I live in this area where everybody's in support of it. Everybody's in support of deporting immigrants. And I'm just so tired of spending my whole life feeling so out of place and so misunderstood because I care about things that actually matter and nobody around me gets it.
Good morning, Grand Rising, or whatever it is that you guys prefer to say. But one thing that I wanted to talk about is this narrative that the migrants do jobs that Americans don't want to do, okay? That is not true in every case. But for the cases that it is true, you want to know how to fix that? Cut out some of this assistance. And I have absolutely nothing against assistance. I've gotten various types of assistance at different times of my life, you know, when I've gone through things and lost jobs or whatever, you know, until I could get on my feet. But the problem is you see a lot of people taking advantage. There's the sun. Let me close this up. A lot of people taking advantage. So the way to solve that problem of people not wanting to do jobs, cut out some of that assistance or make it a requirement that they work a certain amount of hours, which I know that is some places, but some places it is not a requirement. So yeah, cut out some of that assistance because it's supposed to be used as a stepping stone, not something to be on forever. Now, I have rods and screws in my back. Some mornings I wake up hurting very badly. Most mornings I wake up, you know, at least somewhat aching. But if it's really cold outside, a lot of times I wake up and I literally cannot move. Shamar voice, literally. I can't move for real. Like, so, but you know what? I have to get myself together. Sometimes it takes a minute, but I got to get myself together and I got to get up and I got to take my ass to work because my bills ain't gonna pay themselves. So I say all that to say, I would not at all worry about people not wanting to do certain jobs. Because if you make it to where they have no choice but to get up and take their ass to work, guess where they gonna go? Work, which is where I'm headed now. Y'all have a blessed day. Love y'all. Thanks for watching.
I said no ice.
Oh, sorry about that. Let me fix that for you. All right, you're
I said no ice.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think you said more ice.
Sir, can I talk to the man?
Remember when he said migrant and immigrant workers were taking black jobs and we all were confused because I don't know any black person that works on a farm or that's a seasonal worker for a farm? I started to think today, okay, so he's deporting immigrants, even if they're documented. If you're not a legal citizen, even if you have papers, if you're not a legal citizen, you're being deported. You're gone, right? So, and farmers are complaining that their crops are rotting in the fields because either their workers are being deported or they're too afraid to come to work. So I'm thinking, okay, so this week we learned that he's trying to cut out all federal funding for higher education, meaning that if you can't pay for your education, you won't get it. So are they trying to make it where black people are, because if you can't get a higher education and there is no other job and the person that was doing the job is not here anymore, Jesus, help us, Lord.
It's time for us to put our very best Karen skills to good work.
I've been summoned. First step, I am going to read the rules and regulations of ICE terms of engagement as if these are the conditions on an expired coupon. Next, I am going to ensure that if I am in a situation where somebody needs to be made aware of their rights, I'm going to very loudly and very clearly ensure that everybody around me hears my rights. Because if you allow a violation of basic rights, again, like we have already seen in the grocery store, well, then service levels will just continue to decline. And while white lady tears tend not to be something that I like to weaponize, as a person that has very sensitive eyes, it's certainly going to be easy for me to muster up a tear or two when I'm watching my country devolve into a lack of human decency and basic dignity for life and respect for our humans that live amongst us. And while I've never been a woman who likes to cause a scene, I also have a theatrically trained voice that can hit pitches of La Migra that nobody has ever been able to block their ears from hearing. Earth-shattering, glass-breaking, high C sopranic notes to ensure that ICE raids aren't going to be happening, catching people by surprise if I'm around.
And maybe you could use European American for any Caucasian looking person who is in any way in touch with their heritage. Actually, I'll go one further and say, let's use European Americans for people who give a shit about their heritage, right? Like, I'm not talking about like, yeah, I'm kind of Irish, and then put on like, you know, like some green paper hats for St. Patty's Day and go out and get drunk and they're 2/3 German. I'm talking like real deal.
If you haven't heard the term European American, you gotta watch this video. In some of my recent posts, I've been seeing this comment of like European American to describe like Americans that are European descent. Like, for example, similar to Mexican American, Asian American, African American, right? European American. Why don't people that are American of European descent call themselves European American? It's interesting, right? I don't know if I agree or not, but it just makes you think like it should be that way if it's fair. I guess it's just interesting that we feel the need to differentiate minorities, right? So, for example, when Italians came over, like, oh, they're Italian American. When the Irish came over, oh, they're Irish American. Now, once they've been here for a few generations, they've been assimilated into society, they just become Americans. But also they're white. So it's a totally different dynamic. People that are of color go through a completely different experience. And I think in today's world, that's what these words are used for. They're used to say like, oh, no, they're not American, they're Mexican American. It's like, oh, no, they're African American. Because the reality is that the only true Americans are the Native Americans. They were the OGs, the people that were here before everybody else. And then Europeans came and conquered. So it's just something to think about. What do you guys think?
What's fact is that black people in the United States don't have the caucasity to define crime for everybody else while excluding themselves. What's fact is that European Americans have committed a vastly disproportionate amount of crime against humanity in the United States. European Americans have unalived and SA'd people of the global majority by the millions. European Americans have destroyed communities created by people of the global majority in the United States by the thousands. And until that truth is acknowledged and reconciled, there will be no excuses. Maybe someday people will learn that this argument is never the flex that they think it is, because first of all, who indentured the Irish who came to the American colonies as servants? The same people who forced enslaved Africans to the American colonies. So why then do Irish Americans not join with Black Americans in fighting against the systems of oppression that their shared oppressors created? It's not because those systems of oppression don't exist anymore, it's because they no longer affect Irish Americans. And the video that you're responding to is about how whiteness in the United States is not something that requires protecting from Black people, because Black Americans have shown throughout United States history that they possess a deeper morality than the people who enslaved them. So pointing out how white European Caucasians have also been enslaved actually proves the point that they did not learn from their experience to do better and to not commit those same atrocities and worse against other people on the basis of race. Because given the opportunity to assimilate into whiteness, Irish Americans didn't say no because we experienced that treatment and we are not going to do the same to others. They jumped at the opportunity to become overseers, slave patrollers, and police officers. Oh, and by the way, Viking was an occupation, not an ethnicity. And it wasn't even an exclusively European occupation.
I'm sorry, I just feel like this is such a naive way of thinking. Like, they're not asking you where you're from because they don't believe you're from the United States. They're asking about your ethnic and origins, whatever. My biggest question is, are they also asking this to white Americans? Because any person of color, and especially a Black person who has traveled abroad, can tell you that someone has asked them this. How many white people say the same? And I'm also not saying it doesn't happen, but I do not think it happens to the same extent and to the same frequency that happens to Black Americans and other Americans of color. Like, it's just not happening. And it's because people around the world literally do believe that the USA is white, like it's a white country. And it's like, okay, well, how do you think these white people got here? They are not native to this land. The only people native to this land are native people. So if you're going to interrogate me as a Black person about where I'm really from, you better be doing it to other white Americans, pretty much any other American who's not native. But that's not happening. It's always with Black people specifically. And the thing that kind of trips me out, and I don't think people are making this rationalization, but like, for instance, if I were from Jamaica and I said I was from Jamaica, nobody would question it. They'd be like, oh, they wouldn't be like, but where are you really from? But since I'm from the US, they do. Even though Black people in the Caribbean and Black people up here, we all got here the same way. It was the same boat, different stops. So it's just like, I don't know. I don't think people are very aware of this, but I feel like they need to understand a little bit more. Like, when you're asking this question, why are you asking this question? Are you genuinely interested, or are you asking because there's a slight undertone of like, you don't really belong, or you're not really from there, or you're other? Like, I feel like it's not as innocent as sometimes people make it out to be, and I don't like that.
The America lands belongs to people that look like me. We are the original people of this land. We are the Indigenous. We are the original Indians that they were talking about. And as more of that information come out and people start to figure out there's a such thing as a $5 Indian, and that the people that they said originally belong here, they now have to be sent back to wherever they were sent here from on boats and ships, we all can go ahead and start sitting at the round table and clapping our hands. Because what's supposed to be yours is being returned back to you. The harsh truth is that all we can do is sit back and watch. This ain't our fight, y'all. All we can do is sit back and watch. You see, because in order for me to return something that's yours, I have to remove the people that I said it belongs to. I have to remove them. Because in a minute, it's only going to be you and me. See, a lot of y'all is flying over your head. Your shit being returned back to you and you don't even realize it. They don't have a choice. So I expect that if you look like me, sit your ass back, shut the fuck up, and just watch. And lastly, if you look like me, learn how to do this. Learn how to... It's not your fight. We can't help everybody and continue to walk all over ourselves. The fuck?